Welcome to Between the Covers. Welcome. Between the Covers is the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie Larkin, an author, publisher, and head penguin at Red Penguin Books, where we work with authors of all types and genres. So if you have a book inside your head or maybe 500 pages of loose leaf shoved into a drawer, visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. And I see Jack laughing at that. You have no idea how many people mail me 500 pieces of loose leaf. I get 500 pieces of loose leaf all the time.
That's marvelous.
Yeah, it's still
I think it's great.
it still happens that people are writing their book by hand. Not
As I do.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Oh my
9 by
gosh.
14.
Ooh.
Write it all out by hand. When all that is finished, get every idea out. Then I put it on the computer.
Well, you put it on computer.
No, I don't.
You
I have
mail it to
somebody.
me. Oh, you have somebody. Well, I didn't even get to introduce our authors, Jack Palello, Bernadette Walsh, and Nancy Rakowski. Nice to have you. I didn't get the rolled CZR
That's totally enough.
I was like, oh, when we get, you can tell us how to really do that. So you write by hand. Anybody else here on the couch write by hand?
9 by 14 and then
9
if
by
it's all
14?
out.
Is that like a legal pad?
Yeah, sure.
Wow, not by hand.
No, not at all. All
Nothing.
computer.
Not on the back of your hand either.
Nope, nope, nope.
And Nancy, how about you?
No, it's on computer.
Now, both of you who are computers, do you type or dictate?
Oh,
I type.
Oh,
Absolutely.
okay, because people are dictating more and
I've
more.
heard.
That's why I figured I'd ask. Do you type with all your fingers or just two?
Yes. All
Yes.
my fingers, all 10.
Yes.
Oh, gosh, I type with two. And my thumb's on the space bar. I can type pretty darn fast with 2 fingers and my thumb's on the space bar. Now, do you have a favorite pen? Ballpoint, gel?
Pencil.
Pencil.
I do everything in pencil.
Well, that way you can.
Then I could cross out, erase, and so on. Sure.
Wow, a traditionalist there. I love
Well,
that.
you'd be surprised how many authors have done that and do that. I mean, you know, George Kaufman he was so tall, he used to write on top of his refrigerator, 9 by 4, and then drop them into a basket on the side of the refrigerator.
I think that was just for the movie. No? That's fabulous. I love that. Well, years ago, I had written by hand a dissertation because my arm was, something wrong. And thank goodness I did, because they thought that, I had plagiarized or whatever. I was accused. Here it is, handwritten. But not since then. Not since then. Well, I'd ask this three of you if you would bring along or be able to share with our viewers a favorite book, a book you're reading now, because we want to encourage readers as much as writers. And Nancy, you have a book there that I was
Yes.
not familiar with it. It's going to be on my list. So what is that?
It's called The Little Princes, One Man's Promise to Bring Home the Lost Children of Nepal by Conor Grennan. He's only like 25 years old, and he visited Nepal and discovered that all these lies had been told to parents that their children would be kept safe during the war, but instead they were snatched. And so he promised 7 of them that they would be restored to their families. And he's not a religious man, but he is just a faith-filled man. It's pretty remarkable, the kind of steps of faith that he had to take in order to restore these children to their parents.
Wow.
In one area, he just kind of plopped himself in this area of Nepal, trying to find this one little girl, and then he thinks to himself, well, what do I think? The girl is going to cross my path or something? And then she does. Yes.
No.
Yes. And then there was another tough part where he had to get to the plane in order to leave Nepal. And everybody in Nepal is saying, you can't do it in the dark. You can't. We don't. We know the area. And we don't do it in the dark, but he had to. And he took, one of his Sherpas with him. And yes, he was truly stuck. And then And then a Scotsman with his little entourage came in and just really literally saved them, had the keys to this little shed, and everybody was fed and dry and warm in about 5 minutes. And it was this, I mean, that shouldn't have happened. He should have just starved and froze on the side of a mountain somewhere.
Or else we wouldn't have the book.
No, he.
So how many others did starve and freeze and they didn't get a chance to write the book?
Yeah, so it's really a remarkable story.
Wow, that is
Yeah.
amazing. And I had no idea. When you just showed me the book, I had no idea that this was a... How many terrible things are going on in this world that we have no idea?
Oh, I know.
That's
And he
crazy.
just made it his mission to just, I mean, and he really, I mean, he didn't bathe for weeks because it just was not possible to bathe. And for me, it'd be like, okay, that's my bottom line. I have to bathe. But he wouldn't bathe. He wouldn't shave because there just wasn't possible. He was just on this mission to find these kids.
So now we know that Nancy does not like camping either.
Yeah, not like that.
Well, thank you. Jack, how about you? Favorite
Well,
book?
I
Something-
couldn't get the books. Nikos Kazantzakis, who
Oh.
was the man of letters in the first half of the 20th century. He died in 1957. But I think everything he wrote was a masterpiece. From Zorba the Greek to The Last Temptation of Christ to Freedom or Death. Now, Freedom or Death was about the Greek struggle for independence from Turks. In 1829, they won their independence. But The Last Temptation of Christ is a remarkable interpretation of the Christianity, in which Kazantzakis says that the great hero of Western world is the guy who sold himself for 30 pieces of silver and was been condemned forevermore to the depths of hell. I mean, Dante puts him in the lowest level of hell in his Divine Comedy, and so he says that, I forgot his name. It just slipped my mind.
Judas.
Yes, Judas Iscariot, of course. How could I do that? And Judas, he said, he fulfilled God's divine plan because God sent Jesus to be crucified, to die for this, to redeem the sins of mankind. And only Judas had the courage and to be forevermore condemned. But he fulfilled the divine plan. And Kazantzakis says, when he went to the cross, if he didn't rise again 3 days later, there would be no Christianity. That's why Easter is so much more important than Christmas. Right. And that was, to me, a fascinating... He got in a lot of trouble with the Greek Orthodox Church.
Oh, did he ever? I remember.
A lot of trouble with the Greek
that.
Orthodox Church.
Absolutely.
And in Zorba the Greek, Zorba is a life force. I mean, it's a conflict between this force of life and this reticent writer. And Zorba says, among other things, when you write about life, you can't live life. You're in there writing and writing and writing, and everybody else is living and living and living, and Zorba is a life force. He says, the trouble with you is that you have to be truly free. You have to be a little bit crazy. If you're not a little bit crazy, you'll never cut the bond from convention and rules and regulations.
Right.
So he says, boss, you got to be a little crazy. So all these fascinating insights.
All
I thought
right.
Kazantzakis was absolutely brilliant.
All right, good.
Absolutely brilliant.
Good classic recommendation.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Bernadette, what are you reading now?
Well, I brought a book by Alice McDermott. I love Alice McDermott. She has been such an inspiration in my own writing.
I'm not surprised, having read your writing, now that she's an inspiration.
Well, she explores a lot of the themes that I explore as well. Alice McDermott is originally from, I think, Queens. A lot of her books are set in New York or Long Island itself. This book is one of her earlier books. It's called Child of My Heart, and it's set in the East End of Long Island. But what I love about her writing is that she, and her latest book, I don't know if anyone's read it, is The Ninth Hour,
Oh, I didn't
which
read it
I
yet.
just finished, and it's a fabulous book. Her writing is just absolutely beautiful, but what I love about her is that she takes ordinary people and shows the hidden parts of ordinary people, the struggles that they have, that they put a nice face on. And so, again, she has really been an inspiration for me in my own writing.
Right.
And a lot of what I do is, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in Johnny Be Good, is talk about very ordinary people and what's hidden behind the picket fence. What don't the neighbors see? So anything by Alice McDermott, her
Fabulous.
writing is lyrical. I just can't say enough.
Great choice.
And then the other book that I have is, this is a book that I'm just about to start.
Okay.
It's by Zadie Smith. She has a really interesting background. Lives in London. Her mother was Jamaican and her father was English. And her first book was called White Teeth. And it's an amazing book. And I picked up this for like $5.
Oh, good for you.
At the book review in Huntington, which is my
right.
favorite bookstore. So I'm really looking forward to this book as well.
Fantastic. Great recommendations. Now, we hope that you are a reader as well. And after you've read books and you've loved them and passed them around, if you're not quite sure what to do with them, please consider donating them to the Book Fairies. The Book Fairies is our charity of choice here. We love the Book Fairies because they collect over 50,000 books every month here on Long Island and distribute them to school districts in need. They open their doors one day a month for teachers all over Long Island to just fill their vans with as much as they could possibly use. They also take adult books, test prep books, all sorts of things. Books go out to penitentiaries and families in need, and they also are sending books overseas in over 50 libraries in Africa. So thebookfairies.org, or you could bring your books any Wednesday night that we're filming here. You'll even get a free glass of wine if you bring some books here to donate. So don't forget the Book Fairies. Speaking of wine, I think I'm going to pour some here, and we'll be right back after we hear from this. Thanks.
Writing a book is the adventure of a lifetime. Red Penguin Books take pride in giving our authors a publishing experience that is stress-free and celebratory all the way. Some of our authors first approach us with no more than an idea for a book that's ready to sprout. Others submit completed manuscripts. Whether you're at either end or anywhere in between, our goal is to get you published. At Red Penguin Books, we offer options and opportunities that are unique in the world of publishing, and all of them are designed to keep you, the author we so deeply respect, in the driver's seat, unlike other publishing houses. So, if you want to write a book and are looking for a publisher, we've got you covered. Red Penguin Books deal in publishing services, book development, and ghostwriting for digital, print, and audiobook. Call us at 516-448-4993 or visit our website www.redpenguinbooks.com.
Now, I saw Alice McDermott at a conference 25
Welcome back
years
to
ago.
Between the Covers. Thanks so much for joining us. We're here with novelist Bernadette Walsh, who wrote Johnny Be Good. She also wrote a stack of things here. You brought a whole pile of things. Friends Forever and Gold Coast Wives. Oh, now I'm going to have to read Gold Coast Wives. That looks interesting. But I did get a chance to read Johnny Be Good, and now I see where your influences come from. So welcome, and tell us a little bit about your writer's journey. What got you started?
Well, I talked about writing a book, I think, for years, since I was in high school. I always talked about writing a book, but of course life got in the way. And so I waited until I had had a small child. I was working full time, and I had absolutely no time.
And that's when you thought you should start.
Yes. Well, I have to give my husband all the credit. He finally, he was so sick of hearing me talk about writing a book that he bought me a computer, and he said, "Here it is, do it." So I joined a local writing group, the Long Island Romance Writers, and
Ooh.
I started writing. And it took me a long time to get into my first book. I'm a lawyer by training, and so my first attempt was very dry, and it sounded about as exciting as a contract.
No.
And so I had to.
I'm glad I didn't read that one.
Yes, no, it was terrible. But I had to think, how can I get into the emotion part of it?
Right.
Because, I use the different side of my brain when I'm being a lawyer. And so what I did was I started writing from the first person. And so that helped me kind of get into the character and get into the character's emotions. And once I was able to do that, then I flew.
Ooh.
So that's how I started writing. So I've been writing for about 10 years,
Okay.
and I've hopped around genres. I think my first book, Gold Coast Wives, was a very light, airy contemporary romance. It was a lot of fun. It was about a woman whose husband left her and she lost her job, and then she joins a reality TV show. So it was very funny.
Sounds fun.
Yes, it was. It was very funny. And I think, a lot of people's first books, they base it a lot on their own life.
Right.
So I think the main character, Kate Ryan, was very much like me, at least my outer life. So that was a lot of fun. And it was a great learning experience. But then my writing really went into a different direction.
Okay.
And became more like the Alice McDermott, more,
Gotcha.
traditional women's fiction. And so my second book was called The Girls on Rose Hill.
Okay.
And it was very much about the mother-daughter relationship. And so, I write a little bit every day if I can. Sometimes it takes me longer to write my books, but I have written about 10 books at this point.
Wow. Okay, so I only have 3 out
Yes, I didn't bring them all. They're all available electronically.
She could have buried herself behind a pile of books here. So the one I got to read, Johnny Be Good. Now this is not based on you, but there's always some basis of truth in there.
Well, I think a lot of my books are about women in midlife who are facing crises in their lives. I think I also tend to set my books in either Irish American families or sometimes in Ireland, usually based in New York. So similar to Alice McDermott,
Yes.
I base the outward world on things that I know very, very well.
Absolutely.
And that allows
Were you an
me-
Irish dancer too?
I was an Irish
All
dancer.
right. How come I knew that looking at you?
Yes, I was an Irish dancer. I wasn't a world champion
Okay.
character, but no, I was an Irish dancer. So my daughter actually was a dancer.
A
as
dancer
well.
too.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yes, so I was very much in that world. So, I think a lot of there, obviously what happened in that book is not.
I hope is not what happened in your family.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Not giving away any spoilers, but I really hope this is not autobiographical.
No, I mean, I dealt with some very, very heavy issues there. I dealt with
Oh, gosh, yes.
alcoholism. I dealt with the breakdown of the family. I think a lot of what was in that book was regret. My main character, it was about regret. And what do you do when you do something that's unforgivable?
Right.
How do you move on from that? So, again, and in my women's fiction books, I've covered some really, heavy topics.
Yeah, this was very heavy.
Yes, my other book, Cold Spring, dealt with sexual abuse.
Wow.
But I still like to keep them light. I mean, I try to keep it a
book
little
about
light.
sexual abuse.
Well, not that one. That wasn't light. But I mean,
You must be very talented if you could do a light book on sexual abuse.
Yes, I mean, it's not 300 pages of misery. I hope not to do that. I mean, I try and get into people who are in the worst part of their lives and how they can overcome. And I think for all of my books, even though that was somewhat tragic ending, there's still a lot of
There's
development.
definitely moments and you're feeling lightness and family and love. I mean,
And
there was a lot of angst going on, but there were also relationships that were as dysfunctional as they might have been, a lot of love. And that's fabulous. And it's reality. We're
That's
all
right.
very complicated people.
That's right. That's right. But now, so those are 5 of my books are women's fiction. But after I go, especially after Johnny Be Good, which I finished after 2 years, that actually took me the longest to write.
2 years. Margaret Mitchell took like 20 to write Gone with the Wind.
Yeah.
2 years is pretty darn good.
Now I feel better. But after that, I kind of wanted to cleanse my palate, and I wanted to do something lighter. So I've also written some paranormal romances.
Really?
So five of my titles are a paranormal romance, and 5 are women's fiction. But even my paranormal romance, which was meant to be a very light book, of course, took a turn. And and it's actually called See Me. I released it just a few months ago. And it's about a woman who is a witch, but she denies her witchcraft, and she doesn't want to be a witch. And so she becomes a lawyer, right? Which right? And her ex-boyfriend dies. She finds out that he's dead. And she didn't know he was dead until he showed up in her house and wanted, her help and almost to reconnect. And so it was supposed to be a very light, airy book, and it turned a corner and became quite dark. but there is a resolution there as well. So.
Well, let me ask you a question on that basis then. You're a fiction writer and the book took a corner. You didn't see it coming? Are you an outliner in advance or are you writing into the dark when you write?
I always know my character before I put, well, I would say pen to paper, but before I put my fingers.
But you're the only pen to paper here.
Fingers to the keyboard. I always know that character, so I won't always know where she's going. I mean, sometimes I'll say, all right, I think I want to end here, but if the character is taking me in a different direction, you have to go with it. So
Wow. Do you ever get shocked by your characters?
all the time.
Like, I can't believe you just did that.
Yes. Well, what I sometimes get shocked on is Friends Forever. In that book, it was from two different viewpoints. Again, in the first person, but for two college roommates. And I really thought one was going to be more dominant than the other. But I really enjoyed writing the other one. So sometimes that surprises me. So sometimes a character who I think is going to be the star, actually, somebody else steals the
That
limelight.
sometimes happens in real life too, doesn't it?
That's right.
Sometimes, the bit character walks off with the show. It just does happen. So what's on your docket right now, or what's on your computer right now?
Well, See Me is actually going to be the first book in a trilogy called the Reluctant Witch series.
Okay.
So I am working on book 2, which is going to be Follow Me. And that's actually quite different. The first book, again, in talking about family, it's a family of witches. See Me is about the one twin, Fiona, and her twin, Nell, wasn't really that much in it, but she was in a very pivotal scene, and she was kind of the smart aleck, the underachiever. And so I made Follow Me her book. So
Oh, very
I'm about
nice.
halfway through that book.
But now I'm hearing that even in your paranormal romance genre, Fiona and Nell, we still have Irish girls.
Yes.
So whether it's
They're not
women-
Irish dancing.
They're not Irish
they're not
dancing, but they're Irish witches.
That's right.
I love that. Well, I would like two things from you. One is an autographed copy, because you're going to go places, and I want to make sure that
Let's
I
hope
have
so.
something. And when the next book comes out, could you please join us so that, especially a different genre, paranormal romance. We want her back on the couch for paranormal romance. That's for
Absolutely. I'd love
sure.
to come.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and tell our viewers where we can find you and your books.
Well, my website, BernadetteWalsh.com, has all of my books and links to all where you can buy them. Most of my books are available Amazon, Kindle, anywhere electronically. And I'm also on most social media. Bernadette Walsh, I have a Facebook fan page. I also am the host of a radio show on Blog Talk Radio called Nice Girls Reading Naughty Books.
Ooh.
So you can find out about that also on my website. So again, it's BernadetteWalsh.com. I'm on social media, on Twitter, it's BWalshWriter. So you can find me very easily.
Okay, I know I have your website on our website at Between the Covers TV. I definitely want the Nice Girls Reading Naughty radio show. Send me that link so I can
Absolutely.
add it. We're going to add that to the links, and we'll be right back. Thanks for joining us. Here's a pen.
Are you interested in writing, but you're unsure how to get started? Or perhaps you're already an author, but want to hone your skills and receive supportive yet constructive feedback? Welcome to WebWritersRetreat.com. Developed to help once and future authors like you to gain from positive and supportive criticism of your submissions from other writers and our professional staff, push forward through personal timetables and writing exercise sessions. Sharpen your skills through group coaching and Q&A sessions with literary experts. Receive practical resources such as templates, downloads, links, online courses, and free ebooks. Benefit from book reviews and opportunities to join a beta team to enrich yourself as well as other authors. Save with special discounts for publishing services and online courses, social media, and email marketing, and a whole lot more. Visit WebWritersRetreat.com and turn your writing dreams into reality.
Do you have a book, either in your head or on your desk, just waiting to get out to anxious readers? Hi, I'm Stephanie Larkin, author, book developer, and Head Penguin at Red Penguin Books. We're a publishing company specializing in books of all genres and publishing in all formats, including digital, audible, and print books. From business books to romance, memoirs to mysteries, our authors have complete control over their books from start to print. We'll help get your book to booksellers all around. Major booksellers such as Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Walmart, even libraries and bookstores around the world. We believe in our authors. So call or email today to get your free publisher's packet to get started. Just visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and get your book out there and into the hands of your readers. At Red Penguin Books, you call all the shots. So call us today and turn your dreams into a reality.
Welcome back to Between the Covers. Thanks for joining us. Next up is author Jack Bolello, author of Bonds of War, American Patrol, I Still Love Joni James, Heart of a Lion, Must I Go On? And all of these were written by hand on a legal pad. Doesn't that just
before
incredible?
it went on to
Can
computer.
you just imagine all this on a legal pad? So who does your typing, you or someone else?
No, I hired somebody. And
they can
first,
read all
my
that handwriting.
secretary. I was chairman of the history department at Lindenhurst for many years. And my secretary, I paid her after school, at home. And she typed up most of that. But then when she retired, I got another person to type it up for me.
Well, you being a history teacher certainly does not surprise me after reading the history involved in Bonds of War. Are you also a veteran?
No, I took my Army physical on the day President Kennedy was elected president, Election Day 1960.
Really?
And I was 1A classified, and there was such a shortage of teachers. I had just started teaching 1960, and I went to my principal and said, I'll be leaving soon. He says, let me see your classification. I showed it to him. Next thing I know, from 1A I went to 1S, which was occupational deferment. So I got an occupation. Of course, there was such a shortage of teachers in the 60s. Yeah.
I had no idea. I had no idea. Well, I'll thank you for your almost service. It sounds like for 12 hours you almost had a toe in the door there. Well, I asked because certainly it sounded like it was coming from first-hand experience.
Yeah. Well, second-hand experience, because my involvement with a movie that my parents took to see me when I was 5 years old, it stayed with me forever. It was called The Fighting Sullivans.
Okay.
And it's a story of 5 brothers, a true story, who were killed together during the naval battle for Guadalcanal aboard the light cruiser, the USS Juno. Only time this ever happened in American history.
Right.
It was devastating. I mean, I'll never forget, one of the most gripping scenes is when the naval commandant, they were born and raised in Waterloo, Iowa, and he comes to inform the parents. And finally, the mother knows bad news. She says, well, which one? And he says, all 5. Well, when you hear that, it was absolutely devastating. Sure. And it never left me.
Yeah.
So what happened was I wanted to recover this film for my students because I was a teacher, chairman of the history department at Lindenhurst, and it took me on an odyssey around the world. I mean, I'm talking about writing and telephone and so on. Finally, about a year and a half later, I find out that the producer of the film was Sam Jaffe. Now, I remember Sam Jaffe was Dr. Zorba and Gunga Din and things like that. So I write him, and he was good enough and kind enough to answer me. He said, I'm not the right Sam Jaffe. It's my friend Sam Jaffe.
Really?
Same exact spelling. He's in London, and I called Sam Jaffe in London. He brought the film back because he wanted to have it restored. He made it available to me, and I was able to get the Lindenhurst movie theater. And that day, it was like over 700 people who wanted to see it. And that led me to Buffalo, New York, where the ship, the USS The Sullivans, is berthed, and I meet one of the survivors of the sinking of the Juno.
There were
700 men aboard Juno, only 10 survived.
Geez.
10, and I meet one of them, Wyatt
What are the
Butterfield.
chances?
Wyatt Butterfield. He was there for the program. They went up, and we became good friends, very good friends. When he died, I said, I'm not going to let him die. I'm going to tell that story. It's a compelling story. And that became the heart and soul of Bonds of War.
That's a fabulous. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. So it was written inspired by so many facets, but
Absolutely.
so that your friend will live.
One of the survivors, yeah.
I love that.
And there are things that happen. For example, one of the 18-year-old, they were, all wars are children's wars.
Of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean,
They're all
the
bad
average
for-
age of a Marine rifleman in Iwo Jima was 17 to 18. More than 50% of our troops in Europe after D-Day were teenagers. So one of the kids killed on Juno was from Lindenhurst, where I taught. His name was Lawrence Dumper. And when I showed the movie in Lindenhurst, this gentleman comes up to me and says, I'm Lawrence Dumper's brother, Milton.
Oh,
I said,
wow.
wow. He said, I'm moving to Florida. He said, when I was cleaning out the house, I came in the attic, a gift. And the gift had never been opened. It's completely wrapped as a Christmas gift. And on the card it said, to our darling son, Lawrence, Merry Christmas, 1942.
goodness.
Love, Mom and Pop.
Oh, jeez.
When Lawrence was killed, the Navy sent that Chris back. The parents put it in the attic, never opened it. And when I went to Waterloo, Iowa to do a program, which I was invited
Right,
to Waterloo,
right.
where the five brothers were from, I brought that gift with me, and they put it in the museum called the Grout Museum, dedicated to the memory of the five brothers. It's still there, never opened since 1942. So there was a guy named Pershing Wallen, who was 18 when he was from Corbin, Kentucky. When he was killed, his parents were devastated. I learned early on when I was 4 or 5 years old that the most feared person of World War II was not Hitler, was not Mussolini, was not Tojo. It was the 14-year-old Western Union telegram boy.
Oh.
When you saw that kid pedaling his bike through your neighborhood, you knew something was going to devastate forevermore an American family. And I remember saying, please God, don't let him stop at my house. My uncle, I had 3 uncles in the thick of it. And your knees would buckle, your stomach would drop, your heart would tremor, and your soul would pray, don't let him stop at my house. And when you saw those blue stars on the field of white being transformed into gold stars, you knew then that something dreadful. 400,000 young Americans were killed in World War II. Were killed. It was just, And I remember my grandfather, this tough Sicilian, he came from Sicily when he was 11 years old by himself. And I had 3 uncles in the thick of it, and thankfully, they each survived. And we used to have these marvelous block parties at the end of, World War II when our boys came home. And I remember my grandfather, my first Uncle Willie, who was in the South Pacific on a destroyer, my Uncle Sammy, who was in the Aleutians, my Uncle Jimmy, who was on Okinawa. They all came home. My grandfather, this tough guy, threw his hands up to the heavens and said, tonight I could sleep for the first time in 4 years. Now, when I'm 4 and 5, it was amusing, but now it touches my heart. It touches what everyone had to go through.
Oh, yes.
I know my mother she would cry at hockey games. That's how easily she was brought to tears. When one of her friends' sons was killed, she went over there, and she came home, tears streaming down her eyes, and said, how do they bear it? How do the mothers and fathers bear it? They give birth to children, raise them, only to see them killed in war. I'll never forget my mother's tears when things like that happened. So really, I had this inside of me, and finally it came out, and that's the product.
Well, Jack, you speak like a writer too. Am I right? Doesn't he?
Oh, yes.
Doesn't he tell
Oh,
stories
yes,
like
yes,
I want to start typing because he's telling just a simple story, and I'm like, whoa! I got to write that down. Well, I can't thank you enough for
you're
keeping
welcome.
all of the veterans, the soldiers that have come before us, alive.
I got a
and
call-
their stories. It's
I got
so
a call
important.
some years back from the head of the Florida American Legion, and he asked if the dedication page could be used as the motto of the Florida American Legion. I said, absolutely, be my guest, I'm ready. If you read the dedication, I guess you'll get an
Certainly
idea why.
will.
Yeah.
Begins with a quote
Yeah.
from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. And it goes on from Jack. To all the American warriors, the pride of our nation then and now, who were there when it counted and where it counted at the times of our country's greatest peril. Above all, to the American fallen, for those for whom there was never to be a homecoming. May they rest beneath the white wooden markers and the murmuring waves in our blessed memory, always. For they sacrificed all their tomorrows so that we may have our todays. I'm going to cry. That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for preserving the stories. And it's so important because if we don't know and remember all that has happened, we're destined.
I've learned that once a story is told, it will not be forgotten.
That's right.
It becomes part of who we are as a people and who we are as a nation. That's why storytelling was and is and forevermore will be very important.
Absolutely. Jack, what are you working on now? On lots
Well,
of
I have an
legal paper?
idea. I have an idea. I haven't put it to pencil yet.
Okay.
But it deals with an Italian immigrant who came to this country in the 1870 period, and he was an excellent horseman. So he joined the army, signed to the cavalry. Of all cavalries, the 7th Cavalry, George Armstrong Custer's command.
Oh, okay.
And on that fateful day of June 25th of 1876, Custer was on his way to the Little Bighorn in Montana when he was told there were 300 hostiles. He says, no problem, I'll clear them out by myself. So he sent his two Major Benteen and Major Reno on his flanks. And he says to this Italian immigrant, Giovanni Martini, he didn't speak English. So Custer had to write a handwritten note to protect my flanks. I'm going in. Well, Custer goes in. There were not 300 Indians. There were 3,000. And Custer was wiped out. And all the great chiefs were there, by the way. Red Cloud, Sitting Bull, Yellow Hand, Crazy Horse. Now, everyone remembers Crazy Horse, but very few remember his brother, Reasonable Horse. No. No, that there I have to edit right out of that.
Cross that out.
That's part of my editing job.
Ah, the history jokes from the history teachers.
And he survived. Giovanni Martini survived. He finished his out of his enlistment because there was action on the flanks, but some were killed, but many survived. He finished his enlistment. He went to Brooklyn, New York to live. And he died in 1929 with children, grandchildren, and so on. And I worked as a groundskeeper in the cemetery. I couldn't be a grave digger. They'd hit me over the head because that's a very strong union. When I was a teenager, I was 15, 16, and I came across his grave, Giovanni Martini. Yeah. And
So that's the next book.
that's going to be the heart and soul.
All right,
that's
when the
it.
book is ready, we have a seat for you here.
I would be delighted.
Thank you. And can I have a signature so
I
I
would
can
be delighted.
have it for posterity? And we will be right back with our next author. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Oh, you're from St. John.
Welcome back to Between the Covers. Our next author is an author, an artist, and a pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Biltmore. We are multifaceted. Please welcome Pastor Nancy Riccozzi. Did I say it right this time?
Yes, you did.
Riccozzi, I tried.
Yes.
With this big fat book. The book is called The Handbook of Christian Theology and Climate Change. And Pastor Nancy's chapter, of which she's a contributor, is about working with artists, which is fabulous since you are an artist as well. So tell us how you got into writing and art and pastoring, and I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, well, to start, I was just asked to contribute a chapter on artists, and it was like, well, you can write anything you want about it. So I started with a lot of research and started doing a lot of writing. And the more I was reading, the more I realized that it seemed like there was this new genre of artists called climate artists that were using the actual elements like earth and air and water and ice. And then I had a bit of serendipity where I was telling an acquaintance about what I was doing. She said, oh, you have to go to this show downtown near Wall Street because it's about water and it's a good bunch of artists. So I did. And I met one of the artists that I was writing about. So I got to ask her and
Wow.
say, it seems like there's a new genre. And she said, yes, there is. So it was really good to have that kind of confirmation. So I was writing and writing and writing, and it was like encyclopedic. And it was like, I don't know when to stop and how to shape this thing.
Your pages were half citation, I saw.
So I spoke with the editor, and she said, just send me what you have, and I did. She said, oh, you know what you have to do? Subheadings. So subheadings really help shape, and
Yes,
I
and
edited-
pictures.
Yes, and
And
pictures.
pictures. Well,
Pictures are great.
If you are going to be writing the chapter on working with artists, you absolutely need to have, as
Yes,
you do,
yes, yes.
pictures.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, when I saw that you were doing climate change and working with artists, I was thinking about your own art because I know you use recycled materials in your
Yes.
own art.
Yes, I do.
Which has so much to do with climate change as
Yes,
well.
yes. I see it. You know, I didn't include myself in this because it seemed like the second tier. The first tier is the actual elements, and
Yes.
the second is the man-made
That makes
materials.
sense. No, that does
Yeah.
make sense. But you're right there.
Yes, yes,
Second
I am.
tier, but
Yes,
you're right
yes,
there
I
with your
am.
own art.
Yeah, so I use, discarded plastics. So I created a large loom, kind of based on the looms we used as children to make pot holders, only much bigger. And then I just cut discarded bags or tablecloths into strips and weave one way, weave another. When I fill the loom, I take it off and I heat it with an iron. So it shrinks and becomes more malleable, and I can cut it into whatever shape I want.
Now that you've met and worked with and researched these artists who are in that, as you called it, first tier, is that something you might consider in your own art, or
No,
it's not really something you're drawn to? You'll write about it, but
no, writing about it seems to be enough.
okay.
Yeah, because some of them, like I wrote about this one, Melchin, he had these 6 French poodles dragging a sled with actual ice from glaciers. So that's not me.
That's not you. I totally get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that. Well, let me take it another direction. Now that you've been a contributor on a very important book here, is writing more either as a contributor on books or maybe your own book something you might want to consider?
Well, I seem to be like all over the place with the genres. What I just finished writing is a short little play for children on the life and adventures of the young St. Patrick. So it's a fun little piece, very light. So I hope to do more of those. I don't anticipate doing more of this.
This was a one and done.
Yeah, one-off, yeah.
I get that because you could drop the book on your toe and break it.
Yeah. You
So
could.
academic writing, not
I'm not sure. Yeah, I try to make it very accessible too. You know, there's not any academic jargon here.
I mean, if you go in a totally different direction, I know someone with a radio show about nice girls writing naughty.
I don't know how you could fit fit the climate
Yeah, I think you're
into
gonna
that.
I don't know how you
Love it.
fit the climate into that, but there's a
He uses an umbrella a lot.
Perhaps if the artists fall in love.
the rom-com of climate change.
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know.
somehow, yeah.
You know?
Make it very accessible.
There's got to be something with that. So you've written a play. Have you written other plays before?
No, this is
was the
brand
first?
new. Yes, yes.
Ooh.
We needed a play for the church, so I wrote one.
This is how writers used to be. They needed something.
Yeah.
And you filled the need, and that's
true.
fabulous.
Yeah, artists too. I mean, we need to
Yes.
fill that space over there. So
Yeah. Make us something big. It
Yeah.
should have a little red in it.
Or that ceiling, Michelangelo. Needs something.
Was he really commissioned because the ceiling was just plain?
Yeah, it was plain.
And they just said it needs to be pretty.
Remember the old joke? It took him 4 years to paint the ceiling. If he would have used a roller, he could have done the job in a weekend.
Yeah, sure.
That's an old joke. And then the guy, he was very busy. He painted 16 chapels.
He is really the king of all this historical
Yes,
historical puns left and right. Oh my gosh! And you're sitting next to an artist who
Yes.
likes to do things from what you just described about collecting recycled material, somehow stringing it together on a loom, taking it off, ironing it, cutting it out. I mean, some people just use paint and
Yeah, yeah.
canvas.
Yeah, but you know what? What I found is that it sensitized me to just how much plastic we discard. I've been doing it since 2001, and there really wasn't much attention being paid to it.
Yeah.
But the more I did it, the more I saw. I mean, those plastic bags will be blown across, the landscape. It wraps around our ankle. We just toss it off. We don't see it.
Right.
So it was an
Until it
attempt
chokes
to
a sea turtle.
Yeah, so it is an attempt to make what we now think of as invisible material visible, And in fact, I even have what I call the Invisible series, where I use, white plastic or clear plastic, and I made life-size dresses, and it's when did I become invisible? Where did I become invisible? Why and how? And initially, it was based on women's experience of aging. We become a little more invisible as we get older. But I've opened it up to include the disabled, the elderly, children as well. There are whole categories of people we just edit out. Who's important? Who's not important?
I love that. So you're dealing with the whole issue of the environment and recycled material, but also societal issues
Yes. Yeah.
and discrimination.
Yes. Yes.
Beautiful.
And I've opened up my parsonage, and 2 rooms are a community gallery now, so you can see my work if you like to come.
Oh, absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
where can we find that, and
It's
when can we come? And
Anytime. Ring the
We'll be
bell.
there. The bus is leaving in 5 minutes.
2139 Center Avenue, but give me a call or send me an email first.
You don't have like hours. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. It's it used to be a professional apartment.
Okay.
So it's just perfect. It has great light, and I'm looking for more people to exhibit their work. In November 30th, I had folk artists of Long Island, master carvers. And I had gone to the Merrick Senior Center to just visit one of my parishioners, and there he was carving with a whole lot of other carvers, and they're doing amazing work. So I gathered them together and just showed their work, and they sold their work, and it was a really nice day.
Wow. Could you please send me
Sure.
a link, information, something, so
Yes.
that I can blast it out to
Yes,
everyone? Because
yes.
art space on Long Island, wow.
Yeah.
We definitely want people to know about that.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to be back to hear where we can find our authors next. Thanks.
Right, thank you.
back to Between the Covers. Thanks for joining us. Our authors have so many things going on. Authors, artists, we're just doing everything, and then we have our own comedian here. So if you want to book Jack, his agent is sitting here in the audience and will be taking bookings. But remind our viewers wherever they can find you and what you're doing next, Bernadette.
Well, you can find me on my website, BernadetteWalsh.com. As I mentioned before, I'm the host of a radio show on Blog Talk Radio, where I interview various members of the romance writing community. And I have over 60 authors, and they're really some very impressive authors as well, New York Times authors.
Fabulous.
And so again, and you can find me on most social media. Again, I have a Facebook fan page, both for Nice Girls Reading Naughty Books and also for Bernadette Walsh. And Twitter, I'm on B Walsh Writer. So
Terrific. Do you
Please reach
do
out.
book club visits and things like that?
absolutely, anywhere on Long Island, I would love to do a book club.
Wonderful. So Bernadette's books are women's literature. So if you would like to have your book club reading any of her books, she will visit your book club. I love when an author can visit a book club. That's fabulous. Jack, where can we find you?
As you could probably guess,
He'll be at Governor's on Thursday.
Since I write everything in pencil longhand first, I am in the computer and technology preschool.
Okay. Well, we're glad that we caught you here then.
So I do not have a website. I am not on Facebook. I am not on Twitter. I am not on Instagram.
So thank God they're watching you now.
But I do have a number of venues. Last night I was at the right here in Montauk at the Jewish synagogue there and community center, doing a program on the Jewish and Italian Americans in peace and war.
Wow.
I have 5 different programs that I present.
Wonderful.
And I've gone to libraries and women's clubs. I'm doing the Meadowbrook Women's Initiative in a couple of months, and Friday I'll be at Harborfields Middle School talking to 6th graders about my Civil War story for young adults. So I have a lot of activities going.
Wonderful.
But as I said, I remember, and I guess I'm trying to say this because I want to give myself the proper excuse, but the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, the more we advance technologically, the more we degrade ourselves spiritually. And it kind of pondered that idea. And I think it's true. And you see now that with the explosion of anti-Semitism in this country and Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. So, as I said, I am not on none of these, and I kind of feel comfortable with not being on them.
I totally understand, but if you ever want to somehow get me some dates and flyers, I'd be happy to
Okay,
blast them
sure,
out to
absolutely.
us low-level, yet technologically high-level people. Okay.
Thank you, thank you.
And how about you? Where can we find you?
NancyRiccozzi.org or my Facebook page, or you can just call the church, St. John Lutheran Church.
Oh, right. Yes, go to church. Love
Yes.
that.
And we're going to have a puppet play based on St. Patrick's
And St.
life.
Patrick, and she wrote
March
the play.
14th, yes. So
March 14th, the
yes,
puppet play.
2 p.m., be there at B Square.
Okay,
Yeah.
and if you visit BetweenTheCoversTV.com, we have a place that you can sign up for your newsletter so that you're sure not to miss any of what our authors are doing. They're all sending me things. I'll be posting them on the website, blasting them out, but let's support our local authors. And thank you for joining us on Between the Covers. Have a great day.
Thank you. That was fun.